Now, we're about to start sculpting, but that's going to involve using something called variously PSubs, Pixar subdivision surfaces, Catmull-Clark subdivision. There are lots of names for it, but essentially it's just a different kind of subdivision algorithm that we can use that allows us to have, well, there's a lot of flexibility that it gives us that traditional subds don't. But before we jump into that, I think it definitely bears talking about in a little more detail. So let me create a new document and drop a couple of unit cubes in here, and I'll just move one of those off to the side so we can look at them side by side. Now if I select this initial cube and hit the tab key, of course, that's going to break it into lots of littler polygons, right? It's kind of similar to hitting the D key twice, right? So each time I hit that D key, let's say this polygon here splits into 4. Click it again, that splits into 4, and on and on. So each time you hit the D key, it multiplies all those polys by 4 and smooths them in the process. If I hit the tab key, the same exact thing is happening. So if I select this item and look in its item properties, down here at the bottom, there is a subdivision settings area. Under that is a subdivision level. That's the equivalent of the number of times you hit the D key to subdivide. Each subdivision level breaks the polygon into 4 while smoothing it. So if I do a subdivision level of 1, that's equivalent to just smoothing this one time. Each one of these polygons, this polygon has become 4 polygons. And you can see there's the vertex that would be there at the middle if this were broken into 4 equal parts. If we set this up to 2, that effectively subdivides it again. Set it up to 3, subdivides it again, 4, again, and 5, and on and on. And each time this gets smoother and smoother, and the result should get more and more perfect. And it sort of does. But the problem with this is a little bit hard to see. Actually, there are several problems with this, but anyway, the main one is if I introduce here another shameless plug. Here's a plugin called Bling. It gives me a drop-down with lots of useful matte caps for looking at my geometry. And I've just dropped a reflection environment on here, and look at this broken reflection here at this pole in the corner. You see how the surfaces aren't really smooth right there. And no matter how high I take that subdivision level, they really will never get very smooth around poles like this one. Also, if I go down to my zebra stripes, you'll see we've got getting a really nasty breakup here in the corner that's there's really no way to fix using subdivision surfaces. So if I select this other cube now instead, and I'll turn off my matte cap for a second there, we'll select this geometry, and this time, rather than hitting tab, I'm going to hit shift tab on the keyboard, and that's going to give me a slightly different result. And that may be visually apparent from the beginning. If I select both of these, see this one's actually a little bit bigger than this one. Well, anyway, if I, with this item selected, if we head down to those settings again, and I change the subdivision level up to, say, 5, notice that nothing happens to this one. This one stays the way it is. That's because this one is actually what we call a Catmull-Clark subdivision surface, and it has a separate subdivision level. So if I set that one up to 5 and hit enter, then we'll get a very smooth result over here. Now, note, of course, that the Catmull-Clark setting affects this one, but does not affect this one, and vice versa. Right? So completely separate settings. Now, one thing you might notice with the mouse behavior between these two is that if I mouse over one of these polys, it turns kind of a bluish purple. I don't know if you can see that in the video compression, but hopefully so. And this one over here, if I mouse over it, is a greenish color. So that's something to commit to memory. Greenish means Pixar subs, aka PSubs, aka Catmull-Clark subdivision surfaces. This one means, the blue over here, means traditional subdivs. Now, if I look at Bling and I turn on my zebra stripes here, notice these ones are perfect. Right across these poles, everything looks really, really nice. If I turn on that reflection map, notice those reflections are really nice and continuous all the way across here. So, the smoothing is much better quality with the PSubs than with the traditional subs. But that's not all. Let's talk about something else. If I select this edge on both of these, and then run the edge weight tool, Shift W for edge weight, start to pull up that edge weight. Notice, the behavior is a bit different, but also just look at the quality of this. Look at this one, nasty, right? Not so good. This one, on the other hand, really quite good, really beautiful. And in fact, this one, you're seeing a minor break in there. Well, if we crank up that setting again, select this guy, we'll set that subdivision level up to, say, 7. Now it's perfect, right? Really, really good. If you get that subdivision level up high enough on a Pixar Sub D surface, you're going to get really nice results. And that includes edge weights, it includes poles, and it includes some really cool sculpting tools that we do not have with traditional subdivs. And that's the point today, because we're trying to get to where we can model these seats. And doing that is going to require these Catmull-Clark subdivs. Okay, so one last thing before we go. You might be wondering, why, the Foundry, do you include traditional subdivs if PSubs are so much better? Well, the reasons are many, but the main ones, there are two. One is compatibility, the other is performance. Compatibility because the traditional sub-D algorithm is really well known and really widely disseminated. It's almost the same in every package. If you bring this subdiv over to Blender, or Cinema 4D, or Maya, or 3D Studio Max, or Lightwave, any of the above, it's all going to be pretty much the same thing. This, on the other hand, is a newer technology, and only certain packages have it. Maya, for one, does have it, but many packages don't. So for compatibility reasons, it's good to have both, and most people would want to see the same thing in Modo that they see in their other packages. The other reason is performance. These traditional subdivs are lighter weight than the Pixar Sub-Ds. The Pixar Sub-Ds use a completely different way of generating the underlying geometry, the underlying polygons, and as such, they can create many, many more polys. It ends up being a much heavier mesh overall than the traditional subdivs. So many people who are designing very heavy meshes or working towards gaming or things like that where the weight really matters also still want to use traditional subdivs. But for people like me who are designing shapes of things, like industrial designers and things like that, Pixar Sub-Ds are by far the way to go. I highly recommend using them rather than traditional subs. So from now on, I want you to, if you are like me, I want you to strike that tab key from your mind and just use the shift tab from now on. That's what I'm going to be doing, and yeah, now you know. All right, so let's get back to that car and start sculpting on those seats.